Hello, my name is Pastor Kris Kollar. I'm the pastor at Pleasant Valley Lutheran Church near Malabar Farm State Park and St. Paul Lutheran Church in Lucas, Ohio. Greetings. We're reading through the Bible with commentary. We're in the book of Proverbs, and we're up to Proverbs chapter 20. Chapters 1 through 9 are introductory, talk about wisdom. Chapters 10 through 29 are the bulk of Proverbs, these pithy, wonderful sayings, observations, or promises to some extent, not transactional. It's not put the quarter in and get the blessing, not a guarantee, but generally speaking, these are things that we have spotted and know that they are true. And today I was trying to think of another one that is a modern translation. And I think a modern proverb that we sometimes say is what goes around comes around. It's the idea that what you give into the world is going to come back to you is one of the more modern translations. Or not translation, I mean, it's a modern saying that we have. Kind of like anything that can go wrong will go wrong. That is Murphy's Law. That would be a modern proverb. Other modern proverbs. I'm going to try to come up with some more for each one each day. Just some of the modern things that we tell each other, that we say to each other. Previous session I said stupid is as stupid does. I think another one is something to the effect of beauty is only skin deep, but ugly, beauty is skin deep, but ugly is bone deep, or something. I don't even know how you actually quote that. The idea that, it's one thing to be pretty on the outside, but ugliness runs very deep. So we have all kinds of expressions and sayings. I actually just thought of another one that was a very silly one that my dad used to say, if you get stiff in them joints, stay out of them joints. And of course, it's a joke, but it's talking about if you get stiff in your joints, then you need to stay out of those. But stiff also means getting drunk. So it's a pun, it's a joke. If you get drunk in those places, stay out of those places. That's a pretty good proverb, actually. But then also we get stiff in our joints, and sometimes we need to be careful with our joints. That's not really, is that a proverb? It might be. It kind of is. Anyway, chapter 20 of Proverbs. Wine is a mocker, strong drink a brawler, a fighter, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise. So if you drink wine or strong drink, it's going to make you a mocker and a fighter, and you're not very wise if you let yourself be led astray by drink. Verse 2, the dread anger of a king is like the growling of a lion. Anyone who provokes him to anger forfeits life itself. We heard a similar proverb in a previous session, the idea that the anger of the king is like a lion growling, but especially back in Bible times, if you ticked off the king, then the king could just be like, he's gone. There's no trial, there's no life in prison, you're gone. Verse 3, it is honorable to refrain from strife, but every fool is quick to quarrel. So even to these days, if somebody who's going to just always argue with everybody all the time, nobody likes them much, and they're very foolish. Verse 4, the lazy person does not plow in season. Harvest comes, and there's nothing to be found. So I live in a rural area. I grew up on a farm. When it comes time for planting, you have to plant. Like there's the window. Even if you just have a garden or a patio container, when it's the time for planting, it is time for planting, and you need to plant the plants. Because if you don't, then it comes time for harvest, and everybody around you is harvesting their crops, and you don't have one because nothing got planted. And I think that applies also to other things beyond agriculture, that sometimes there's a time that things need to be done, then we need to do them, or we end up paying a penalty for not having done them when they needed to be done. Verse 5, the purposes and the human mind are like deep water, but the intelligent will draw them out. So we don't always know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and we don't even necessarily know why we ourselves are doing something, let alone why somebody else is doing something. But intelligence, they can work on pulling that out. Verse 6, many proclaim themselves loyal, but who can find one worthy of trust? Verse 7, the righteous walk in integrity. Happy are the children who follow them. So if you're going to be a righteous person, then you walk with integrity, with truthfulness, with honesty, and the people who follow, children who follow that, are going to be happy and well off. Happy, again, is from a Hebrew word, Asher, Asher, A-S-H-E-R or R-E, and it means so much more than happy. Prosperous, blessed, successful, happy, satisfied. It's just this full word. Verse 8, a king who sits on the throne of judgment winnows all evil with his eyes. Verse 9, who can say, I have made my heart clean, I am pure from my sin? Oh, who can say that? Some of us like to say, oh, I'm a good person. But the older you get, the more you know. I'm an okay person. I'm a good enough person in one sense. I try to do what is right and what is good. Is my heart clean? Am I pure from my sin? No. And even though I'm a pastor and I declare every week that God forgives us all our sins, I also know how very self-centered I am and how very quickly I am sinning again. This is the self-centered pride of humans we just innately have. Like we say captive to sin and cannot free ourselves. Verse 10, diverse weights and diverse measures, both alike are an abomination to the Lord. So if you were a merchant or a trader and you had a scale, you should not have more than one set of weights. You should only have a good set of weights that works right. Verse 11, even children make themselves known by their acts, by whether what they do is pure and right. So even children, and it certainly applies to adults, whether somebody is good or not good, a lot of how we know is by what they do. How do they behave? Are they kind? Are they leading an upright life? Are they doing the work that needs to be done? Even children, you can say, oh, that's a good child because of what they're doing. And it's always a balance to have the faith. We need to have faith, but you don't need to have acts to go to heaven. You don't have to do works to go to heaven. But if you have faith, you're going to do works. And if we have made ourselves right with God, then we're going to be known by what we do, not just by what we believe. You can believe it in your heart, but if nobody can see you act, it doesn't impact how you act, then nobody knows. Okay, where am I at? Verse 12, the hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. So the Lord gave us the senses. Verse 13, do not love sleep, or else you will come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you will have plenty of bread. So if you like to sleep in, you're not going to be well off. But if you open your eyes and work hard, then you will have bread to eat. And of course, one of the most famous people that could never did not sleep was Thomas Edison, who would, one of these people, there are those people who only need a few hours of sleep a night. He was one of them. And he just worked and worked and worked and worked and was very successful and made a name for himself. Verse 14, this is as much an observation as anything. Bad, bad, says the buyer, then goes away and boasts. And if you've ever gone anywhere where you've had to haggle, maybe a flea market or a yard sale or somewhere, and you say, oh, well, this thing's not worth much. I'll give you $2. And they're like, what? And you're like, no, this thing's worthless. Here's $2. This isn't worth that much. You give them $2 and you walk away and say, guess what I got? I got this thing for $2. Like, that is a thing that still happens all thousands of years after this proverb was written, that buyers will say, oh, bad, bad, bad. But then as soon as they go away, they're like, oh, we got a deal. Verse 15, there is gold and abundance of costly stones, but the lips informed by knowledge are a precious jewel. So yes, there's gold and jewels, but if you really want a special jewel, go look for somebody who has knowledge. Verse 16, take the garment of one who has given surety for a stranger. Seize the pledge given as surety for foreigners. So we've talked about this a little bit. If you guarantee a loan for somebody, then you have to put up collateral. And in the previous proverb we heard, don't do that. Don't co-sign somebody's loan. Don't, in this one, give surety, give assurance. Co-sign the loan is what we would do in modern times. That you shouldn't do that. But if you do have somebody do that, if you give a loan and someone gives surety for the stranger, take their garment, which was, for a poor person, one of the most valuable things that they had, because clothing was very complicated, very long, tedious work to make a garment. And so you would only, if you were very poor, you only had one garment, one outer garment that you would wear over top. And they're saying, take that, seize the pledge. So if they make a pledge, you take their collateral, because you're probably not getting your money back. Verse 17, bread gained by deceit is sweet, but afterward the mouth will be full of gravel. So I feel like this is something that a mom would say to a kid. Yeah, you steal that gum and it tastes good, but then it's going to stick to you later and it's going to regret it. You're going to regret having done that. Verse 18, plans are established by taking advice, wage war by following wise guidance. Verse 19, a gossip reveals secrets, therefore do not associate with a babbler. Or I think the modern version of that, it's not so much a proverb, but it's just what we say. At least I've heard people, and I've said to people, you need to be careful if you associate with somebody who tells you a lot about other people. And it's fun to hear the gossip, but somebody who's going to mutter and babble and talk about other people is going to talk about you. And somebody who complains about somebody else, the chances of them complaining about us are very high. And I'm as guilty as the next person of liking to hear gossip and wanting to know what's going on and what's happening. But there's a part of me that's very distrustful of somebody who is quick to say negative things, because like, well, what negative thing are they going to say about me to somebody else? Verse 20, if you curse father or mother, your lamp will go out in utter darkness. Ooh, do not curse your parents. Verse 21, an estate quickly acquired in the beginning will not be blessed in the end. And I think the modern equivalent of that is people who win the lottery and get this huge windfall of money, and a year or two later are right back where they started, if not worse off. Because quickly, and I'm trying to think, there's a modern way of saying that. Quickly gained fortunes never last, I think, would be a modern version of that. Verse 22, do not say, I will repay evil. Wait for the Lord, and he will help you. Ooh, that's a hard one, because when somebody gives me evil, I sure want to repay evil. I want to connive and see how I can get them back. And this is saying, no, let the Lord do it. Let the Lord help you. Let the Lord be the one who repays other people. And of course, it's very hard because we want to, at least I sure do. But we can never do it the right amount. We can never do it truly fairly, unlike the Lord, who can make sure that people get what they really should be getting. Verse 23, differing weights are an abomination to the Lord, and false scales are not good, which is an awful lot like the one we heard earlier, verse 10. Diverse weights and diverse measures, both alike, are an abomination. This one was differing weights are an abomination. So same concept, though, that to have different weights and to have false scales, not a good thing. Verse 24, all our steps are ordered by the Lord. How then can we understand our own ways? And I think I've said before that God gives us a mind and calls on us to make decisions and go about our day and try to live righteously. But to some extent, what happens to us is in God's hands, and we don't know how we end up where we end up sometimes. Verse 25, it is a snare for one to say rashly, it is holy, and begin to reflect only after making a vow. I'm not sure what that means. A snare to say rashly, it is holy. So to make a promise, to make a vow, to make be careful of the promises that you make, because then you're stuck keeping them. Verse 26, a wise king winnows the wicked and drives the wheel over them. Ooh, the wheel. So to winnow is to break down grain, to get the pieces of grain off of the stalks of grain. And one of the ways we've talked about in previous sessions is to have a sledge, but you could also do it with a wheel where you run over the grain and it breaks the shaft away from the heads, the actual grains of grain. So then when you throw it up in the air, the grains fall straight down, the straw falls over a little ways, and the chaff completely blows away. So, but a wise king winnows the wicked, separates out the wicked, and breaks them down, basically. Verse 27, the human spirit is the lamp of the Lord, searching every inmost part. I'm not sure what that means. Human spirit is the lamp of the Lord, searching every inmost part. So certainly God can see every bit of ourselves, and even the parts of ourselves that we hide from ourselves and try to pretend are not there, the Lord sees them. Verse 28, loyalty and faithfulness preserve the king, and his throne is upheld by righteousness. And footnote says, or loyalty. Verse 29, the glory of youths is their strength, but the beauty of the aged is their gray hair. And it is certainly true. Young people have this strength that we just admire, that as we get older, we get less strong. And even if we try to be active, we end up losing some of our strength over time. But the beauty of the aged is their gray hair. And of course, here in the United States, there's a lot of people who want to cover up that gray and pretend it's not there. But the reality is gray hair is beauty. And when we see an older person with gray hair, then we should be treating them with respect and recognizing the wisdom that they have, and that they are beautiful with their hair just exactly how it is. And the last verse in this chapter, verse 30, blows that wound cleanse away evil, beatings make clean the innermost parts. Ooh, this sure sounds like something that would justify abuse. And we've said earlier, to spare the rod and spoil the child does not mean that you can just beat your child and be abusive. In the same way, blows that wound and beatings that make clean the innermost parts, it does not mean that we should just beat our children. That is not appropriate. However, that said, to recognize that sometimes the best way to deal with evil and just misdoing bad behavior is to give discipline. And we don't, at least I don't enjoy giving discipline, don't like it at all. But when we set boundaries for our kids, and for ourselves for that matter, then our kids do better. And to say, if you do this, then this is the response. If you do this thing, then these are the consequences. And they don't have to be beatings to be a pretty substantial consequence and to have the same effect of cleansing away evil. But it sure is hard when our kids are little and we don't want to discipline them, because it's a lot of work. And parents can be lazy too. And yet when we make the choice to do what is right by our children, then it does cleanse them of, well, I don't know if it cleanses them with evil, but it sure helps them to learn the right way to go. Of course, all of that said, kids, sometimes a lot more is caught than taught. And I am still, to this day, kind of astonished by some of the attitudes and things that my kids have. And I know that they have that attitude because I'm their mom. So we were in a store or a restaurant and the kid was very noisy. And they were not too happy about this noisy kid. And they were like, we could have never been that noisy. And like, nope, you were never that noisy because I did not let you be that noisy. Because in my family culture, I'm from a Germanic, very German upbringing and history of my family, probably 80% German. We do not have children be noisy in stores. And if I let my shoes go clippity-clop while walking through a department store, my mother was all over my case. So I'm not as maybe quite as harsh on my kids, but the standard was still we are polite, we are quiet in stores. And now when my kids see some other kid or person who's noisy in a store, they're like, what? That's not right. That's not how we're supposed to be. I didn't have to beat that into them. I just set the standard, and when they were very young, still encouraged that no, we don't make this, we don't cry in the store, we don't scream in the store. And not to say that I didn't have to pick up one of my kids and carry them screaming outside of a store once, but I didn't leave them in the store either. We walked out the door. So all of that to say that there's ways to discipline without beating a child. But when you think of blows that wound as translate into discipline, discipline does teach us all kinds of ways. And when we get disciplined, even as adults, we can have people come and say things that we don't want to hear. And when we do, we should say thank you, because then it helps us to learn and grow and become better people. So I need to sneeze. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. There it is. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look at you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace. Like, subscribe, comment. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you again next time.